Welcome back again to Light, and today we're going to be talking about the sad struggle that it is to be Lindsey Graham. So, he's been in the news a lot lately. Senator from South Carolina, Lindsey Graham, who today we got some footage showing of how sweaty, sad, and nervous he is. And I'm going to jump in on this discussion a little bit here. But first, before we get to the sad, sweaty desperation that was the news clips that came out today, let's introduce, for those of you who are unfamiliar with who he is, let's introduce you to who Lindsey Graham is. Okay? Lindsey Graham is a neocon, warhawk, genocidal maniac. None of that is hyperbole. That's all verifiable. I'm about to get into plenty of reasons why. If these aren't sufficient enough for you, just look up his voting record and his public speaking record on your own. You'll quickly see what I'm talking about. So, in 2018, Lindsey Graham said in response to the DPRK, which is North Korea, the issue, remember, with Trump and North Korea and like fire and fury, like the world has never seen. Okay, remember that whole debacle? Well, here's what Lindsey Graham said on it. And this is why when people literally refused, especially back now, 2020 is a different ball game, but especially like back a few years ago, like people refused to ever say anything Trump did was good. Well, you forgot that there's fucking retards. I gotta stop using that word. I'll work on it, but I ain't working on it today. You gotta understand that there's dipshits like Lindsey Graham out there who are even worse on many of these issues. He said, in response to the whole North Korea issue, don't underrate killing them all. He was on a Fox panel of, I believe it wasn't Fox and Friends, it was one of the morning shows like that, though. Don't underrate killing them all. Just genocide of North Korea. Wipe them off the planet. Bam! Now, regardless what your pea-brain emotional reaction to that is, even if you're a sick fucking mongoloid backwards fuck who's like, yeah, that wouldn't be so bad, realize that it is under the classification of genocide. So, casually calls for the genocide of North Korea. When asked, how do we get out of Iraq by Kennedy on Fox News, he said, or it may not have been Kennedy, it actually might have been CNBC, so scratch that. When asked, how do we get out? By, I believe it was someone on CNBC, he says, we don't. We don't get out of Iraq. That's how. We stay there forever. Big brain. Galaxy brain foreign policy. He's anti-Iran deal. I mean, I already had an entire video dedicated to explaining how it is basically impossible to be anti-Iran deal. Especially if you're pro-America. If you're pro-America, you cannot be anti-Iran deal. If you're pro us not getting nuked potentially by more of our enemies, then you cannot be anti-Iran deal. You can't. The only reason he was anti-Iran deal is because he would rather go to war with them than to have this deal that we had set up by the Obama Biden administration, where we got to completely monitor 24 hours a day their nuclear material amounts, their weapons development. I mean, that's a lot of stuff that we got to do. And he was anti that deal because, like I said, he literally wants to go to war with everyone. That's his foreign policy. If Lindsey Graham has ever criticized anyone on foreign policy, that is the most laughable, pathetic joke of a person to criticize that there could ever be. Ever. Because his foreign policy starts and stops at go to war with anybody with valuable resources. That's his foreign policy. Just offensively invade every country in the world that has something we want in it. Smart. General Mattis, when reading the provisions of this deal that I was just mentioning, said, I was stunned at how tough of a deal it was. We gave them their money back. In return, we eliminate any possibility of them obtaining a nuclear weapon. So there you go. The general of the administration that you are supporting came out and said that it was an amazing deal because it was. It was an incredibly tough deal on them. And you're out here anti-Iran deal because you're Lindsey Graham and you're pathetic. Alright, Lindsey Graham has been in favor of every single war we have offensively or otherwise engaged in overseas. That's also true, and like I said a minute ago, that's also not foreign policy. That's not a foreign policy agenda. Just like, I'm insane, so every war is good. That's not foreign policy. This motherfucker doesn't need to be a senator of anything. He doesn't know how the country works. He doesn't know how the world works. He only knows how to funnel more money to the defense contractors and how to funnel more bombs to brown people overseas. That's his foreign policy. That's the extent of how he knows this shit works. He's a dipshit. He doesn't understand it, and yet he's an elected official of the United States. Vote him out! Jamie Harrison 2020, if you're in South Carolina. Graham railed against... Now, here's some more modern stuff. Because that was a little bit of background of stuff that was before 2020. Now, maybe you would have thought, like, okay, well, with the Trump administration just literally going off the rails into the weeds with how they're handling everything to do with 2020, maybe this sad man could have held up a little bit of opposition to the Trump administration. Nope! Senator Lindsey Graham railed against poor people getting slightly more money when they were laid off during a pandemic by acting like the unemployment benefits are 1, permanent, and 2, unreasonable. They're neither of those things at all. First of all, they're not permanent. He was on Fox News with some... It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who on Fox News was interviewing him. They're about all the same. They really are. He was on Fox News, being interviewed by somebody, and he was basically making the argument that this is going to destroy the entire free market of jobs because these people are going to be incentivized not to do anything because they're getting paid like a little bit more on their unemployment benefits than they used to. Okay, the real story there, first of all, that's not true, and it's not permanent. But the real story there is, hold on, hold the fuck on, pause. What do you mean they were getting paid more on unemployment than they were at their jobs? The real story and scandal there is that they were getting paid so little at their jobs that unemployment benefits were offering more money to them. That's insanity. That is the destruction of the job growth. That is the destruction of the working class economy. That is the scandal. Not the fact that they're getting it now during a pandemic, but that the fact that they couldn't have an approximating wage to that before they got laid off, and before the pandemic. Scandalous. He's on the side of they shouldn't have that little bit tiny extra money that we refuse to vote a stimulus bill to otherwise help them with. And the second of all, it's the least unreasonable thing of all time. It's the most reasonable benefit of all time. And in fact, if you want to argue that it's an unreasonable benefit, you would be arguing that people need more because they can't afford everything that they have to do. All the bills, all the cell phone bills, all the food, all the gas, all the everything with just unemployment benefit. Like, you need a little bit more money than that. Okay? And the real thing to be saying it would be unreasonable with is that we need to give them more money. We need to stimulate the consumers that buy the shit from the corporations and factories that you guys love so much. We need to stimulate the people who buy from them. 1, making them more money, if you love that. 2, obviously helping every American and every American family. And 3, keeping the economy alive. I mean, it's really, really simple. It's so simple. You have more money to spend. You're a spender. Then you're going to buy more things from the people who want to sell them to you. What about any of this is bad? Nothing. What about any of this is, okay, maybe it's unfeasible. How are you going to pay for it? How do we pay for $1 trillion military budget every year? How do we pay for $4 trillion of absolute liquid funds of a blank check to all these businesses that have savings and all kinds of shit saved up all these years? How are we going to afford that? Oh, we will afford it because we control our own currency on a fiat currency-based economy? And you mean we can afford anything we really need to at the moment? Oh, maybe that's how we're going to fucking afford to help the American people then. Dipshit. Moving on. Sweaty, desperate loser Lindsey Graham cries and begs for more South Carolina constituents to donate to his failing campaign so he can go vote against their interests of the interest of South Carolinians by not being in favor of more stimulus and small business subsidies. So he was on the news today and he was sweating bullets. And he was crying. I don't know what was tears and what was sweat because they were mixed. Because he was just on there whining. Now, I don't know where my opponent got all this money. But it'd be so good if you could give me a little bit of that money. Because nobody give a fuck about me anymore. I'm just over here not voting to help any of them. And fighting tooth and nail anyone else who wants to vote to help them. I don't know what's going on. Why won't no one vote for me? And why won't no one donate to me? I wonder why. Because you are supposed to represent them. And you are representing your donors. People who didn't vote for you. People who gave you lobbyist money in smoke-filled back rooms. Maybe that's why no one gives a fuck about you. Because we can see that we're starving. We don't have jobs. Because of this pandemic. That you and your beloved orange fuck won't do anything about. And you're expecting us in return to just bend over backwards and give you a fucking goddamn thing. South Carolinians, vote Jamie Harrison. He's pro-stimulus, by the way. Pro-small business. Pro-common sense police reform. Vote Jamie Harrison. His opponent, speaking of, Jamie Harrison, announced he'd raised $57 million in the third quarter of this year. Graham cries about it during the Amy Coney Barrett hearings. What a weird bitch's name. So yeah, I believe he made 27 or some odd million in donor money. And his opponent has gotten enough popularity from South Carolinians and the nation to have raised $57 million. I believe that's a record. Looks like they're not very happy with the job you're doing, Lindsey Graham. If in South Carolina they are preferring more than double you, an African-American man who is a Democrat, who is pro-police reform and pro-stimulus and all this stuff, in South Carolina. Sorry, Lindsey, it looks like you might be on your way out, and I hope you are. Because in conclusion, if you're a South Caroliner, vote for Jamie Harrison so that you can actually get someone in your Senate's office to represent you and not the military-industrial complex and not whatever it may be. Big Pharma. Not the deep state that is controlling everything that we do in the planet by having endless wars all over the planet, by stealing endless amounts of resources from everywhere. The true deep state. Maybe you might want to vote for that guy. Vote Jamie Harrison and get this embarrassing, genocidal, sad sack out of office and ship him to a pussy country like the UK or some shit. You limey fucks. Fuck UK. Fake country. Fuck him. Send him over there. He could have fun being over there being a pussy that sucked the dick of the military all day. Fuck Lindsey Graham. He's not a patriot. He's not an American. He's a little sad, simpering. I'm Lindsey Graham. Please, somebody help me. I'm just a genocidal fucking maniac that's in favor of every war. Get him the fuck out of my country, thank you. The light is coming.